Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is my honor to be with you today to share with you my knowledge and my experience about the task topic that was given to me by the course director. My name is Major Wilwarn Analea V. Alegato, Officer 17026, member of Corps Professors, and the acting Assistant Chief of Staff for Personnel of GHQ and HSC. My task for today is to give an introduction to the curriculum theory and development. So for this, the learning objectives are to define terms, concepts that will be discussed, explain the concept of curriculum studies, describe what curriculum theory is, and differentiate between aims, goals, and objectives. As a graphic organizer, I will be shown on the screen is where my topic will be found in the greater scheme of things in the curriculum studies module, or in the entirety of this course. So on the left side, on the upper left side of this figure is the topic that I'll be discussing today. So the definition and meaning of key concepts of curriculum theory and development. And then later on, I will also be giving an introduction or a discussion on foundations of curriculum. Now, all of these or both of these will be seen as something that will give a good background or a solid, at least an overview of uh, the things that you need to give you a good background of how curriculum design, development, and implementation is being done in the armed forces of the Philippines. Now, the first concept that we have to get past with is the difference between education and training. So, from the AFP Education and Training System Manual, developed by the Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff for Education, they have developed and defined education to be something to be theoretical learning in the classroom or any institution. So this pertains to those discussions or those meetings wherein it is part of a whole and it is comparatively long term in duration, and then concepts are generally discussed in a setting wherein you have other classmates that are also or who are also learning with you. Now, all of this are done to develop a sense of reasoning and judgment, and basically to prepare you for a future job. For training is the shorter version of education, so it may last only just days or even just months. So it is relatively shorter. Why? Because it just gives you the transfer, or it just trains you to have that specific skill set to do specific tasks in your present job so that you will be improving your performance and your productivity. Now, with that given, in all the discussion that we will be having, we will be pertaining to education. So we will be pertaining to education using the definition that was provided by JA. Now, most of the curriculum change that we saw in the past was kind of the best described as unplanned or just a drift. Okay, but this was described by Hoyle in 1969. But in the most recent years, especially in the Philippines, we witnessed changes in the national curriculum. So on the left side of the slide is the changes of basic education, wherein we have introduced K to 12, uh, or 12 years of basic education. So this was the legacy of Pinoy or President Ninoy Aquino. So it is called now the K to 12 program. Now, this was also a byproduct of the Philippine qualifications framework, which was also adapted from the ASEAN qualifications framework. Now, in this qualifications framework, we have again, as mentioned earlier, we have added two levels. Correction, this should be grade 11 and then grade 12. So this did not exist previously, and but now with for the past 5 years or 7 years, it has already several schools are already offering, if not all schools are already offering grades 11 and 12. Now, the Philippine qualifications framework tell us that you can move from one to another. So from the technical and vocational pursuits to one that is more of academic or scholarly in nature. So for the technical and vocational pursuits, there are skills that being trained or being honed in you, and you get certifications from level 1 until 4, or you get a diploma in practicing that specific skill. For higher education, which is longer, so you need to finish grade 12 for you to get into higher education, and then pursue a post baccalaureate or a master's degree if you want. Now, also, you can also pursue the highest level of education, level 8, which is postdoctoral or the doctoral level. So that is now how education has changed in our country. So most recently, but not just Philippines, all of us, all over the world, has been affected by the pandemic, and the delivery or the implementation of this framework has been affected. So how it is being delivered now, so whether it's on purely online or still face to face, although this is very rare, or it's a mixed or blended learning. So that is how education has changed in our country. Now, what are the other concepts of curriculum? So what is curriculum? Curriculum is can be described by educational curriculum. Okay, so curriculum is educational curriculum. We know educational curriculum if we use curriculum interchangeably with syllabus. Okay, so if we have a syllabus, we have that. So the syllabus shows us these three things, or the magic triangle. So we have the learning targets in the syllabus or the program of instruction. So what do you want your students to learn? And then what learning activities are they going to be experiencing in that course? And then how are they going to be assessed if they really did learn? Now, if all these three are congruent, or an exact match with the standard has been met. Okay, so what are the other concepts of curriculum? So the other concepts of curriculum is total curriculum. So total curriculum is equated with the totality of the knowledge and skills that we need to learn. So it is not just the teaching program that you're pursuing. It is not just one subject as described by a syllabus, but the total. So for me, let's say I have finished the BS Physics curriculum. So I have learned all the knowledge and skills that is needed by a physics graduate. So those include the soft skills, the social skills, communication skills, projects and experiences, offline content, okay, and so on and so forth. The total curriculum just tells us that schools should plan their curriculum as a whole. So the curriculum offered by a school and the curriculum received by individual pupils should simply not be a collection of just subjects. So it should be holistic and integrated. Now, what else? There are also parts of the curriculum that are not written. Okay, it's not written in the syllabus, it's not written in the BS Physics curriculum, it's not written in your program, but you catch this. It is part of what you have learned. So this is called the hidden curriculum. The hidden curriculum is composed of those things which students learn at school because of the way in which the work of the school is planned and organized, and through the materials provided, but which are not in themselves overtly included in the planning or even in the consciousness of those responsible for the school arrangements. Social roles, for example, are learned this way. So it is claimed as are sex roles and attitudes to many other aspects of living. So implicit in any set of arrangements are the attitudes and values of those who create them. And this will be communicated to students in this accidental and perhaps, I hope not, sinister way. So this factor is, of course, of particular significance when the curriculum is planned and imposed by the government. So an example of sources of hidden curriculum is how things are said versus what is said. Okay, what are the conversations in the doorway and the hallways? Okay, so those are part of the hidden curriculum. How does a teacher treat the students? Okay, how do students treat each other? So those are parts of the sources of the curriculum. The school cannot cannot basically cover all of that, but it is caught in. So this is the subculture of the school. Now, we have identified, or we have mentioned earlier, the written curriculum. So the written curriculum, or that's the planned curriculum, may not be the same as the one that has been received by the student. So this is what we call expectation versus reality. So much the same point emerges when we consider the distinction which has sometimes been made between the official curriculum, the one that's written, and the actual curriculum, or between the planned curriculum and the received curriculum. So by the official or planned curriculum is meant what is laid down in syllabi, prospectus, and so on. The actual or received curriculum is the reality of the pupil's experience. So the difference between them may be conscious or unconscious, the cause of any mismatch being either a deliberate attempt by the teachers or others to deceive or to make what they offer appear more attractive than it really is, or merely the fact that since teachers and pupils are human, of course, the realities of any course will never fully match up to the hopes and intentions of those who planned it. So, planned curriculum and the received curriculum are much in the same way as expectation versus reality. Now, another concept uh, that we encounter is the formal curriculum and the informal curriculum. So this is actually a spectrum. So from the formal to the informal, and in between them is the non-formal. So we must also recognize the distinction that is often drawn between the formal curriculum and the informal curriculum. Between the formal activities for which the timetable of the school allocates specific periods of teaching time. So this is wherein you go to a class at a specific period at a specific classroom. Okay, and those many informal activities that go on usually on a voluntary basis. So like clubs, okay, at lunch times, after school hours, during weekends, or during holidays. So these latter activities, your sports, your clubs, societies, so school journeys and the like, are often called extracurricular activities, and this suggests that they should be seen as separate from, as over and above the curriculum itself. So it's but that is just formal and informal. So it's still part of the curriculum and it is part of that spectrum. Now, I have forwarded to you different concepts about curriculum. But what is really curriculum? So, the problem of definitions are the serious and complex, and the chapters, okay, will reveal in our discussion that, or the sessions will reveal in our discussion that in planning for curriculum, change and development, we need to be aware of all aspects and dimensions of the educational experiences which pupils have during any period of formal education, and with their underlying principles and rationale. So the definition adopted, therefore, is that curriculum is the totality of the experiences the pupil has as a result of the provision made by the school. So if we take the broad definition of curriculum as a starting point, then it becomes possible to identify the kinds of issue which the study of curriculum must address. So which, okay, in the foregoing in the after this discussion, we you will be having in greater detail. So now, what is involved in the study of curriculum or curriculum studies? So practice as well as theory. So curriculum study is practice as well as theory. The study of education is a practical activity and not merely as a body of theory. To get to grips with the realities of educational practice and to do so from the inside. So in a manner that the philosopher, the psychologist, or the sociologist can never do. So their studies have essentially and inevitably been conducted from the outside. Okay, so outside looking in. Their concern has been with the effect of educational practice rather than with its nature. Okay, with the realities of the classroom. So if recently they have begun to turn their attention to these realities, they have in fact been developing as sub-branches of curriculum studies. So curriculum studies is a practice as well as theory. So curriculum studies is also not an applied science, not an applied science. So in general, these difficulties illustrate the problems and the inadequacies of all attempts to adopt a scientific approach to the study or planning of education and or curriculum. So curriculum studies cannot be seen as a science, okay? And especially not as an applied science. Why? The history of attempts to theorize about education is littered with examples of this kind of scientist approach, and all of them have been theoretically misleading and practically harmful. So human beings seem to need security of certainty in all areas of experience, and thus they are prey to all illusory forms of such certainty. So this tendency is particularly odd, since it is the case that the more scientifically human an activity is, the less susceptible it is to understanding through a search for objective truths. So education is one such activity. So there you have it. So and thus does not lend itself to a study of narrowly scientific kind. So it was what Maurice Holt in 1981 has described as a complex and untimely impenetrable process. Okay? So, and a major reason for this is that there are many areas, most notably those of values, moral, and aesthetic, in which knowledge, which claims to some kind of scientific certainty, cannot be attained. So, indeed, when we come to look at the significance for the curriculum and that movement, which has come to be called postmodernism, we will see that there are good grounds for questioning and challenging knowledge claims in all fields. So that's curriculum studies being not an applied science. Now, curriculum studies is also beyond methodology. To evaluate any curriculum plan or practice credibly, we need not only understanding of the technicalities of curriculum planning and innovation, but also the ability to discern the underlying values and assumptions of the curriculum specification. Indeed, it would not be difficult to argue that the latter may be far more important than the former. For to be subjected to some form of indoctrinary process through lack of the ability to analyze critically and identify the value positions implicit in the forms of curriculum we are offered or exposed to is in the long term inimical to educational development in a way that some lack of understanding of the technicalities of curriculum innovation or planning or dissemination can never be. So for a while, the latter may diminish the quality of educational experiences offered, the former must have the effect of rendering those experiences positively anti-educational. Okay, so we cannot have an exact methodology. And then finally, conceptual analysis. Okay, so in the study of curriculum or curriculum studies, there are concepts that you need to to fillet for you to be able to understand. So when I started this discussion, we started with discussing what education is, what how different is it from training, and then if you have curriculum, the word curriculum, what are the other concepts that are being mistaken for curriculum, mistaken or being used interchangeably for curriculum. So we have done that. But as we go along this process, as we go along the discussion, you will notice that there are several concepts related to curriculum and not just one. So these are several. So you need to have a good grasp or at least a good analysis to distinguish one from the other if there are any distinctions at all. Now, so that is curriculum studies. So we have identified what education is, what are the terms that are being used synonymously or interchangeably with curriculum, but what is it? What is it? So what is the curriculum? So at this point, I will be asking you, shown in the slide are two figures, okay? Two figures. So the one on the left side is a rosary, and then the one on the right side is a puzzle. So which do you think better describes curriculum? Is curriculum better described by a rosary? So I hope you are familiar when of the rosary and how you are going to use it. Or curriculum can be better compared with puzzles. So at this point, I'd like you to, you can stop this video and think about what curriculum is for you. Okay. Now, what is curriculum? So what is curriculum? In this slide, we have this definition. So the term curriculum actually came from the Greek word korere, meaning to run a course. So it means that you have a goal to finish a certain course, and then you have to go through certain experiences so that you will be able to say that you indeed finished that course. Now, there are narrow definitions and then there are broad definitions of curriculum. So when you say narrow definition of curriculum, we see curriculum as just a plan, a program, or a course of study, or a POI, or a package that can bring about learning. Okay, we learn something, we have gained additional knowledge, we have gained additional skills. So from that, that could be considered a curriculum. So following are some definitions from this perspective. So if that is how it is defined, we can say that curriculum is a course of study. Pratt has identified or defined it in 1994 as curriculum being a plan for teaching and instruction. So it is a plan. It can be viewed as a blueprint for instruction. So that is how you see. That is one way one can see curriculum. Okay, for broad definitions basically just means that we are looking at curriculum as a process. So this process includes the thinking behind coming up with a package. So how did you come up with that package? How did you come up with that plan? How did you come up with that program? So what is that process that you did? So what is that continuous effort of making it serve the needs of society? So uh, describe as that, we are describing or we are defining curriculum in the broad terms. Okay, so it includes values, attitudes, and experiences of students inside and outside the school. So, broad and narrow definitions. So on the left side is the product model, or we are looking at curriculum as a product that needs to be transmitted, product that needs to be learned. So the left side is also equivalent to the narrow definition. For the right side, the right side shows us the process model. The process model is the broad definition. So in the product model, the teacher has great responsibility in planning and setting outcomes. The behavioral outcomes use taxonomy language from the perspective of the student. Okay, so Bloom, if you remember Bloom's taxonomy, so that is being used in the product model. So there is a precise assessment if outcomes were achieved. Okay, so you will really know if you did or you did not achieve those outcomes. It is a highly structured education. So you need to go through a certain set of puzzles for you to complete the entire picture. Okay, students are given choice, but only through electives. Okay, so because the major courses and the core courses has already been selected for you. And also, the transmission of content and knowledge are the emphasis for this model. So, there. Now, in the process model, learning is the primary responsibility of the student. Learning is the primary responsibility of the student, shown by this triangle with the base at the bottom. So, wherein that's where the student responsibility is. The student is given choices. Okay, on the product model, no, very limited choices. For the process model, the student can choose what what experiences he or she wants to have while undergoing that process of education. Now, because he or she has the choice, social and at this point, we now have reached the discussion checkpoint. So you can pause this video and answer this question. So in the professional military education that you have undergone thus far, so whether that's basic or advanced or even general staff corps, what approach to curriculum was used or highlighted? Was it a process model or uh, was it a product model? Okay, you can pause this video and think about that. At this point, we will now be discussing the elements or components of a curriculum. So there are basically four elements of a curriculum. So these were identified first by Tyler. Okay, these were identified by Tyler in 1949, wherein first he asked the question. Okay, he asked the question, what educational goals do the school intend to achieve? Okay, or in short, what is the intent? What is the intent of the institution? Next, what is the content? Okay, what is the content? So what is the learning experiences that you would want your student to uh, experience? Okay, next is what is the approach? Okay, what is the approach? How are you going to deliver the uh, curriculum that you have identified as one that you will deliver as a process or as a product? And then evaluation. How are you going to know that you really did what you set out to do? Okay, so that is, or those are the four elements of a curriculum. And how they interact with one another is what we now call curriculum theory. So it refers to a set of related statements that give meaning to school curriculum. So by pointing out relationships among its elements and by directing its development, its use and evaluation, so it gives justification for practices in curriculum. So according to Revbu in 1990, a curriculum theory should provide a practical guidance to what to teach, who is taught, who should control its selection and distribution, and who gets taught what. So it is a way of seeing things or guiding principles for curriculum. So curriculum theory gives us three purposes. So it will give us a description, an explanation, or a prediction. Okay, and a description, an explanation, or a prediction of what is going to happen. If you arrange elements in whatever manner or in however manner you see fit. Okay. Now, so curriculum theory involves planning. So it is what? It is a process of gathering, selecting, balancing, and synthesizing relevant information from many sources in order to design those experiences that will assist the learner attain the goals of education. So this is the thinking stage or the conception stage of the curriculum development process. So you have to plan first. So how are the elements, how are the components going to interact with each other? So when Ralph Tyler in 1949, as mentioned earlier, uh, the curriculum has to be seen as consisting of four elements. So again, so that was his contribution to this pool of knowledge. So he asked these four questions. So wherein the four elements, okay, are objectives, content or subject matter, the methods or the procedures, and the evaluation. So in short, the claim is what we must distinguish in our curriculum planning, what we are hoping to achieve, the ground we are planning to cover in order to achieve it, the kinds of activity and methods that we consider likely to be most effective in helping us toward our goals, and the devices we will use to evaluate what we have done. So Tyler's own way of putting this point is to suggest that there are four fundamental questions which must be answered in developing any curriculum and plan of instruction. So shown on the slide are the questions. So this analysis, if taken just as it stands, would give us a very simple model for curriculum planning. So it is very simple, linear. So you just have to answer these four questions. So in sequence. So which requires us to specify our objectives, to plan the content and methods again, which will lead us towards them, and finally to endeavor to measure the extent of our success. However, the criticism of this model is it is too simple a model for many reasons. So which we will see. So it's too simplistic. So but simple is beautiful. Simple is elegant. Okay, so especially for a theory. But what we must note here, however, is that rather than offering us a single and simple model for curriculum planning, Tyler's work can be seen as giving us possibility of adopting any of several planning models. So actually you can mix and match these questions. So for if a curriculum can or must be viewed in terms of these four elements, different planning models will emerge according to the ways in which we take those elements. So the priorities we might give to them and the choice of focus we might adopt. So it really depends, okay, on these factors. So some planners see curriculum content as central, so that the acquisition of that content by pupils becomes the central purpose of the curriculum. So the organization becomes a matter solely of effectiveness of delivery, and evaluation is focused on the degree of attainment of achieved by the pupils. So if that is how you would want your elements to interact with each other. So now Tyler's own concern, however, is, as we have noted, was that the purposes of the curriculum, so that he is usually seen as one of the founding fathers of the aims and objectives model of curriculum planning. So with that model, the educational purposes take pride of place, and content is selected not for its own sake but for its presumed efficacy at enabling us to achieve those purposes. Organization is similarly designed with these objectives in mind, and evaluation is framed so as to assess how far those objectives have been achieved. So that is for curriculum planning. So that these are the questions that you will be asking yourself when you plan a curriculum. Now, curriculum design, according to Dahl, is the structure or pattern of organization of the curriculum. So how are you going to arrange them na? Okay? And then curriculum development. So you have planned, you have designed the curriculum. So now you will what? Okay, arrange all the processes and activities of the school. So it is a continuing process. Curriculum development is a continuing process of evolution and planning of curriculum. So meaning it is not linear pala. So there is a part in that linear or that straightforward approach wherein there is a cyclical portion. Okay, so there is an evolution, there is a continuing process, okay, of development. Now, curriculum implementation is putting into effect what has been planned. So you plan, then you execute. So it is the process of ensuring that the new curriculum and the curriculum materials are made available to all the schools and institutions targeted by the curriculum development project. Note that in this definition, how Tyler has envisioned it is that curriculum is the same for a lot, or if it's not a national curriculum, several schools are implementing the same curriculum. So that's why the term. So are made available to all the schools and institutions. Okay, next, the final thing is curriculum evaluation. Okay, the final thing in curriculum theory is evaluation. But no way it is the last or the least important. So curriculum evaluation is the process of checking the extent to which the curriculum objectives have been achieved. Diba? We wanted to achieve something, so we planned for something, we designed a curriculum, we arranged how the experiences are going to be lived or experienced by the students, and so we have implemented those, and then we evaluate now. We evaluate how far are we from the objective. And we, in the implementation, the we seek that the gap between what was planned or what we wanted to achieve is very small, or if not non-existent. Okay, so that's it. So curriculum evaluation. So finally, we come to the last portion of this discussion for an introductory course. So this is just a crash course. So we have really looked at Tyler's model. So we ask questions, what educational purposes. So when we ask the question, what educational purposes should the school or institution seek to achieve, we are looking at three different concepts again. So we are looking at aims, goals, and objectives. How different are they from each other? So aims, goals, and objectives are crucial in the curriculum development process. So we shall therefore explain the meaning of this term. So educational aims serves a visionary function in curriculum. So the aim shows us what we want to achieve. So that is your vision board, okay? It is a rallying point for all curriculum activities. So whether you hire a teacher, that act of hiring a teacher should be in consonance or in support to that vision, the implementation or the execution or the realization of that vision. So here, educational aims have a global quality and a broad framework. So it is very broad in scope. So they help in guiding and directing educational planning. So they help in guiding and directing educational planning. So for example, in PMA, the educational aim or the PMA vision is what? It seeks to be what? In 2028, okay, a world class or the premier leadership institution, in the region. Okay, so that is very broad. Okay, so premier leadership institution, so there are several things that you would want to ask. So if you want to clarify those to be as specific as possible, we are going down to the lower level. But for now, the educational aim serve a visionary function in the curriculum. So there are four dimensions: intellectual, social, and personal. So intellectual focus on the development of the intellect. Okay, social aims deal with interpersonal relationships. Personal deal with self-development. So how do you want to develop your students? How do you want to develop your faculty? How do you want to develop your entire school? So and then productive. It should address economic aspects of the society, both micro and macroeconomics. So your school should be able to um, contribute to the improvement or the development of the society. So that is for the aims. For the goals, it is more specific. It is more specific, and there is an application of the aims now. So the goals provide a destination. Okay, so this is what we usually term as the base camps. Okay, the base camps. So goals indicated what is expected to be accomplished from a particular effort. So if you are going to do if you're going to do interdisciplinary tour, what do you wish to achieve in that endeavor? So it is more specific than the aim. Okay. The next is educational objectives. So these are statements of performance that the student should be able to perform, to demonstrate, and this is derived from the instructional goal as stated in measurable and observable terms. Okay, so again, the highlight there, or to be emphasized, is it is an objective if it is measurable and observable. If you cannot measure that, if you cannot observe that, then that could probably be an example of a goal or an aim. So educational objectives, they guide decisions, okay? They clarify what skills and abilities need to be developed by the students. And then they enable the teachers to communicate with students what they want to achieve. Hindi yung basta boka-boka lang, basta graduate lang. No. They must have specific objectives. They must be able to do something uh, in particular and specifically. Okay? So, there. So at this point, we have, and I hope you have been familiarized with the different terms that are being used when we talk about curriculum theory and development. So we have discussed what education is, what curriculum is. Okay, there are several things or concepts that are equated with curriculum. It is a practice, it's not just theory. So it is not an applied science. It is beyond methodology, and it is composed. Curriculum theory is composed of the relationships between different elements of curriculum, which are namely the objectives, okay, the educational objectives, the activities, okay, the arrangement of these activities, the approach, and then the evaluation. Okay, so those are the concepts that had been discussed in this introduction.